or may not know that GoStudent is one of the biggest edtech companies out there. They are officially, and congratulations Felix, the first edtech unicorn out of Europe, and we are excited to hear a lot more about the company and how that came to be. So Felix, I'm going to start off with you, please. If you can tell us a little bit about the inspiration behind the company. How did it all start?
Yeah, thank you, Liz. I really love coming to Madrid. Great food, great vibes, great people. So it's really an awesome place to be here. Actually, the story with GoStudent that when I went to school, and I'm sure when you think back of the time when you were one or two really good teachers, I also had the luck to experience that. My history teacher, he was just amazing. And it's one of the biggest problems in nation globally, lack of access to great teachers. And this is the problem we want to solve. Building a global school, connecting children with awesome teachers.
Amazing. I love it. I love the personal story there and the personal experience that kind of drives on, I guess, into building the huge company that it is today. And Vinny, shifting over to you, thank you for being here. Vinny is partner at Leftfield Capital, super mega top VC firm all the way from New York, investing in the US and Europe as well, obviously.
Yeah.
How did you come across GoStudent? How did you find this little company coming out of Austria?
So this now not so little company was really part of a broader thesis. We were spending time in European education technology because it has been historically underpenetrated. If you look at the spectrum of edtech all across the world, in a lot of Asian countries, the societal and cultural importance of education's up here versus the quality of the public school education's down here. And that gap is filled by edtech. If you look at the US, it's probably here. And if you look in Europe, historically it's been smaller. But that doesn't mean it's actually a bad mark. In fact, if you look at all of Europe together, it's just as big of any of these markets like China, but it's... And in looking at this market, the first bucket we looked at was the problem is you have efficacy churn. You reach a certain level and you have the platform. You say, yeah, I'm kind of conversant, now I'm going to go speak with people. And then you have test prep. There's a really profitable companies in test prep. But what's the problem? 100% customer churn. So needed to learn something, they learned it, they took the test, they're gone. But then you have K through 12. If you're an 8-year-old student and you're bad at math, you're probably going to be bad at math in 9th grade and in 10th grade. But more importantly, if you're excellent, you're going to want to stay excellent at math in 9th grade and 10th grade. And so as the stigma is wearing off, we're really left with a tremendously large and underpenetrated K through 12 market. And the short answer of how we found the company was dramatically reached out cold to the company, but then coincidentally we found that the folks who led their seed round, a great firm called Speed Invest, we've co-invested with many times. So we knew them. One of the advisors to the company, Thomas, was one of the co-founders of HelloFresh. We'd invested in him. And he's backed us in turn as an LP in our fund. And so even though for the first time in our lives we could not get on a plane, it was the first deal we'd done in the pandemic, we were able to really get to know these guys from afar. The space we were really interested in, directly in line with our thesis, and it was a company growing tremendously quickly with great founders.
Maybe one little anecdote to add. He mentioned Thomas, like one of the founders of HelloFresh is indeed one of our advisors. And I remember I met Thomas 4 years ago, by coincidence in Vienna. And then I went to New York and I asked him if he can recommend me someone who know how to party in New York. And he back then mentioned they were working at Inside Ventures before. But we unfortunately didn't make it back then. But when they reached out again, I knew they are the right ones. The culture fit is there.
Excellent. It's so important with that personal relationship, and what happens inside and outside in the boardroom is equally important, I guess, right? These are long-term relationships now, so the dynamic between you guys is fundamental. I love that it's kind of an outbound strategy as a VC, that you kind of don't see nailing as well, and it's you were able to complement the outbound, finding the company, and then wrap it all around with the network. No, it's amazing how the networks work and how these connections are so important. Coming back into taking a little deeper dive into the sector, Felix, that you guys are operating in. You're talking about trying to find good teachers. I think we can all resonate with that. Where do you see the market going? What is the size of the opportunity for you guys? You've grown so quickly in a short space of time. Is it a case that this market is suddenly bigger than you expected? Are we just talking tutoring? Are you branching out into other parts of education? Or how do you see the market opportunity right now?
I mean, if you just take a look at the numbers in Europe. In Europe, for example, every year, all the countries together spend around 4% of GDP education. This is around 980 billion euros that is spent on education on a yearly basis. 20% comes from private households, so almost 200 billion euros in education only in Europe coming directly from private households. So money-wise, there's an opportunity there. But more importantly, and this touches on the topic Vinny mentioned in reducing the gap. So digital education can basically enable schools, enable school teachers, enable kids, enable parents to really unlock their full potentials. Make schools more efficient, enable teachers to become better teachers, enable kids to really unlock their full potential, and enable parents to also make their life easier and provide their child the future and foundation that they deserve. And I think this market opportunity is a multi-trillion-dollar opportunity at the end of the day. And I think we definitely need to focus more and should invest much more in education in the next years.
Well, we'll certainly agree with you at that, and would love to see it happen. And Vinny, you guys are some of the people making it happen, right? So I love this, that you had a pretty specific thesis in EdTech, and particularly in Europe. I'm flabbergasted to see that you're saying it's going to be about 10% of the investment in EdTech in comparison to maybe US or Asia. Where do you see it going? Do you think a substantial part of your portfolio is going to end up being in EdTech? I also love to hear that you guys have done this deal during times of COVID and virtually. So no doubt in many other industries, COVID has been a huge accelerator in this space. So how is that reflected from the investment world? Do you see more deal flow? What are the areas that you're more excited in this broader theme of future of education?
Yeah, I think, so one on the capital availability in the market, if you compare 2015 to 2020, there's the amount of investment in EdTech. It's no secret that it's a huge GDP all across the world, and largely penetrated by technology companies. So one thing that we did when we invested in these guys is we ran a customer survey, and we found a lot of interesting information, but my favorite thing that I saw was that only 20% of had ever engaged in any tutoring of any kind before. What the internet is for, right? You look at Airbnb or Uber or any of the great internet marketplaces, they took people who had never engaged type of service, that caliber of service, and through price and technology disruption, it accessible to a lot of people. So I think important when we look to the future, we appreciate where we're now, and we are still at single-digit penetration rates of these multi-trillion-dollar hits. So we think there's going to be a lot of really big businesses built, and EdTech is a core pillar our firm does.
Exciting stuff. And I guess for you, Felix, the timing was pretty good when you guys launched and came out. Alluding to a comment that Vinny made, that it has been challenging, no, to get EdTech kind of broadly adopted within the sector. Why has that been? Why do you think it's taken so long, and why do you think that now is the right time for these type of companies within this?
I think in the past, if you look back into the last 20 years of innovation in digital companies, I think a lot of education companies were a bit hesitant, also aggressively scaling into other markets. And by not scaling into other markets, you reduce the market size, which then makes it for investors who look for maybe a bit less interesting. And I think in the last 2-3 years of education companies also taking the courage of the markets increasing the addressable market size and making the whole industry more investable.
Yeah, it's exciting. No, Vinny, why do you think for these companies to get scale, I guess?
I think that they're separated into three buckets. One is the way that we culturally treat education. There's kind of an old idea that, it's education, or it should be subsidized by the government, or it should be in some way provided. This is a competitive world. It's an increasingly globalized world. And if I want marks and get a 5 and be the top of their class, I need to invest in it. And now more and more people can invest in it. It's not $200 an hour, it's $25, $30 an hour. And that's a huge difference. I mean, that's truly a mass market product. So I think with accessibility, the treatment of it will change, right? As it is more affordable and it costs, like what you would spend on entertainment or anything else. The second bucket is kind of where you can meet and the types of business models that births. If you look at the UI of companies like Sylvan Learning, if you look at their home market, you had Schulehilfe and Studenkreis. These are offline franchise companies. They're run in an old school way. You drive your student out to the center. And those are much less interesting scale models. They're healthy businesses. They're good in many ways, but they're much less interesting, and they can't to be $1 billion in revenue the way that these guys can. And now that you have to be a centralized company and scale rapidly in multiple markets, that asset-light scalability is the polar opposite of that old type of education business that went location by location, school by school, etc. So now this market, we're consuming it primarily through the internet, is actually scalable. And I think the third bucket is really just kind of the flywheel of investors putting in money. They're now making that money, so now more founders are starting companies. So the caliber of people and the quantum of capital is changing drastically. And when that starts to happen, we've seen it across various sectors, it exponentially increases the kind of universe of quality companies.
Sure, exactly. A lot of kind of major movements coming there together at the same time, creating a lot of opportunity. It's really exciting to see, and I guess we'll see very specialized investors in this space. It's been rare, kind of specifically edtech-focused investors. And entrepreneurs, there's probably no serial entrepreneur in the edtech space, let's say, because it's still maturing at this point, I guess. So really excited to see. One of our final points that I wanted to touch on, Felix, congratulations on a big year this summer. And Vinny just mentioned $1 billion company, and he certainly wasn't talking about valuation because you're already there. So we're talking about revenue. So where is that coming from? What's the plan? Now you're ready to go. Now you got to spend that money, and obviously you have an ambitious plan in terms of how to sell the company up at this point. So what are your priorities? What are you most excited about now in this next phase of the company?
So the way we do it is two ways. On the one hand side, we grow organically. So what does it mean? It means we are adding more countries. It means that we are strengthening brand in the markets in which we are already more mature. So in markets like DACH, Spain, UK, Italy, France, invest much more money into them to build out the brand. So this is one strong factor. Today, only in Europe, we cover around 0.3% market share. So this shows there's much more room to grow. And on the second part is building an ecosystem. Education is something, think of yourself, every person learns differently. Some person prefer it offline, some want to do it online, some want to do it in group classes, some want to play Duolingo and bubble games, some want to do the Lingo Kids app. So you have all sort of different learning types because education in its nature is fragmented. So in order to build this, the largest education company in the world, what we need to do is we need to combine it, we need to build out that ecosystem of other companies, bring them together, leverage the synergies, and then truly unlock the full potential of the customers that you serve and provide them in every point in time with the right solution. And we just acquired a first company in Austria, Germany, the second largest school communicator. So we are starting now with this strategy, building out that ecosystem and widening our product.
Excellent, cool. Looks like you know what you're doing and excited for the road ahead. Vinny, what's wonderful about VCs, right, and the value they can add is that you've kind of been here before, you've been on your journey, you have a bunch of unicorns in your portfolio. So I'd like to understand, what are you most excited about with this particular team and their trajectory? Obviously, you're investing and reinvesting because you see the potential. And for you, GoStudent, what's the mix between the right product, the right team, in the right market? A lot of VCs talk about these three pillars and some is maybe stronger than the other. What is your mix and your take on the GoStudent opportunity?
It's kind of like asking why a food dish tastes good, right? Was it because it was warm?
Je ne sais quoi.
Yeah, the salt levels, the spice levels, the acid levels, etc. It is all of the above, right? Even as good of a team as they are, if they had 20 years ago, it wouldn't have been possible, right? So the time is necessary. This company wasn't born overnight, right? They started this company, 5 years ago, and it wasn't always easy, but the market got there. At the same time, the speed and precision that Felix and the rest of the team move with is unparalleled. I mean, truly unparalleled. We've never seen anything like it. And the market is, and always has been large, but I'll just underline it one more time. We are still this penetrated. I mean, we are barely penetrated in these markets, and when these guys launch a new market, every market grows like this. So they're going in their existing markets, they're opening new markets, and as Felix said, they're in surface area to sell more products and services to those same customers. So you have a company that in any one of those single vectors would be growing incredibly fast, and they're doing all three. So, I mean, I say $1 billion in revenue in all seriousness. We do expect them to be there and not so far away.
Incredible. Guys, it sounds, please.
One more thing to add. I'm also this definitely would not be possible without having a strong team and strong investor base, but also we have some people from GoStudent here, so if you want to meet some people from the company, we have a really awesome Spanish team, so please feel free to get in touch.
Excellent, guys. It sounds like it is the perfect storm, so watch the space, and we will invite you both back when you hit the decacorn status, and you can tell us all about it and how you got there. Guys, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.